What if Leonardo da Vinci didn't just paint beauty, but hid messages in plain sight, right where our eyes linger the longest? Imagine the Mona Lisa not as a portrait alone, but as a carefully engineered puzzle, a smile that shifts with your gaze, a geometry that guides your attention, a faint whisper of hidden codes woven through light, shadow, and anatomy. Has this ever happened to you? You stand before her and feel the strange certainty that something beneath that calm expression is watching you back. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you and might change the way you see every brushstroke Leonardo ever laid down. From the very first moment you meet her eyes, the Mona Lisa pulls you into a quiet conspiracy. Her folded hands, her ambiguous smile, the soft sfumato dissolving edges like smoke, all of it feels intentional. Leonardo da Vinci, master of optics, proportion, and human anatomy, knew exactly how to guide perception. He didn't merely depict reality. He constructed it with sacred geometry, subtle symmetry, and a choreography of light and shadow that turns looking into decoding. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, lean closer. Could those delicate transitions around the lips and eyes be more than painterly finesse? Could they be keys to a system that hides in plain sight? Consider how the eye is drawn to patterns. Leonardo understood our instincts. Faces first, eyes immediately, then the mouth, then the gentle slope of the hands. He placed anchors there, micro-contrasts, whisper-thin borders, and proportional alignments that set off a chain reaction in the brain. The Mona Lisa effect, that eerie feeling she follows you, isn't a rumor. It's optics. Sfumato blurs edges, so your mind fills gaps, and in filling them, you become part of the code. What you're about to discover might surprise you. Even the simplest curves can conceal a larger design. Golden rectangles can nest within her features. A Fibonacci arc can unfurl from her smile. Lines of force can connect pupil to knuckle to horizon, as if the portrait were a map of intention hidden beneath serenity. And there's more. Light here is never neutral. Shadow isn't an absence. It's a language. Leonardo da Vinci used anatomy as architecture, geometry as grammar, and the Mona Lisa as a sentence that never stops speaking. You feel it in the background too. That dreamlike landscape with its mismatched elevations, the bridge, the winding path, the river that seems to spiral. Is it a memory of a real place, a symbolic journey, or a cartography of consciousness stitched into pigment? Has this ever happened to you? Have you stared at a painting and felt a direction, like an unseen hand nudging your attention from eye to mouth to distant hill? Stay with me until the end, because each nudge matters. Hidden messages don't always announce themselves as letters or numbers. Sometimes they appear as alignments that recur across Leonardo's work, echoes that suggest a master grid. The same harmony that governs Vitruvian proportions can whisper through a face. The same logic that structures a chapel can govern a smile. In Leonardo's world, the boundary between science and art dissolves. Optics teaches empathy, anatomy teaches design, and geometry becomes a doorway. And when a doorway is open, you step through it, or it steps through you. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because once you see how the code works in one place, you begin to see it everywhere. Embedded in the gaze, balanced in the hands, and breathed into the very air between light and shadow. So take a breath, steady your eyes, and hold that lingering question as we move closer to the canvas, closer than we've ever dared, toward the first tiny clue that has been waiting for centuries right there, inside her pupil. If you enjoy uncovering hidden truths and exploring mysteries that change the way you see the world, make sure to subscribe. That way, every time we dive into another revelation, you'll be right here with us from the very beginning. Leonardo's paintings have often been admired as icons of beauty and mastery, but when you look at them through another lens, they begin to feel like something else entirely. Vaults, repositories, secret libraries, where each brushstroke stores knowledge meant to survive centuries. The Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, the Virgin of the Rocks, They are not only works of art, they are encrypted containers. Each carries an aura of intentionality, like manuscripts disguised as portraits. What if every detail, an angle of a hand, the curve of a smile, the structure of a background, was part of a language waiting to be read? What you're seeing might not just be a painting, it might be a map of hidden truth, a silent code transmitting messages across time. Theories about what exactly is hidden are as varied as they are compelling. Some believe Leonardo encoded advanced science, hints of anatomy centuries ahead of medicine, or geometric laws that foreshadowed discoveries we only confirmed in modern physics. Others argue his canvases whisper of esoteric religion, drawing from hermetic and mystical traditions that connected spirit, cosmos, and body as one. And still others insist his true purpose was rebellion, a quiet defiance of the Church's grip on knowledge. In an age where questioning authority could end your life, what better way to safeguard radical thought than to weave it invisibly into images the very institutions would hang proudly in their chapels and halls? To understand why, you need to step into Leonardo's world. He was not just a painter, but a polymath, inventor, anatomist, philosopher, engineer, cryptographer. His notebooks are filled with mirror writing, sketches of flying machines, dissections that revealed the human form, with terrifying accuracy. But behind those pages lies a deeper mindset. He lived with constant tension, between curiosity and danger, discovery and silence. Publishing certain ideas openly was impossible, so he made a decision. If he couldn't write his truths in words, he would write them in images. Mirror writing kept his notes safe from the uninitiated. Visual riddles hid ideas in plain sight. A painting could outlast censors, could cross borders, could reach minds centuries later. It was a code disguised as beauty. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the way Leonardo shaped his paintings suggests that every detail carried dual meaning, what the eye sees and what the mind unlocks. The gestures, the shadows, even the landscapes become part of a journey, one that blends science with spirituality, rebellion with revelation, and art with transformation. To Leonardo, truth wasn't static. It was layered, concealed behind the scenes, demanding not just vision but insight, not just admiration, but interpretation. And that is where the story begins to unfold in ways most viewers never imagined. If you've ever felt the Mona Lisa's smile was telling you more than it revealed, or if you've sensed the Last Supper carried a rhythm beyond the visible, share that with me. Write in the comments the word hidden, and tell me why you think Leonardo might have chosen silence in symbols over words, because the reasons we give often reveal as much about us as they do about him. For centuries, these paintings hung in silence, admired for their beauty, yet never fully questioned for what they might conceal. But today the landscape is different. We live in an era of transformation, where information is decoded, patterns are tracked, and what was once invisible becomes part of our collective awareness. Looking again at Leonardo's work isn't just art appreciation. It feels like a recovery mission, almost as if we're retrieving lost data from a forgotten archive. Each scan, each analysis, becomes an act of uncovering a hidden truth, testing the stories we've inherited, and asking whether the past may still hold secrets capable of reshaping our mindset about history itself. The tools at our disposal now would have seemed like science fiction in Leonardo's day. High-resolution imaging lets us magnify a detail smaller than a grain of dust. Infrared reflectography strips away surface paint to reveal underdrawings, ghostly sketches Leonardo once laid down, erased, and altered. Machine learning detects symmetries and structures that escape the human eye, showing alignments that could prove intentional design rather than coincidence. Behind the scenes, this technology works like a modern mirror to Leonardo's own methods. He encoded with precision, and now we decode with precision. It's almost poetic. The very curiosity that led him to dissect bodies and build flying machines has evolved into the tools we use to examine his legacy. What we begin to see is that these paintings may operate like multi-layered manuscripts. A surface view tells one story, but peel back a layer and a second narrative emerges, one crafted in ratios, hidden geometry, or subtle shifts of light. And when those layers converge, the impact is profound. The Mona Lisa no longer looks like just a woman with a smile. The Last Supper no longer feels like just a sacred moment, and even the landscapes in the background begin to read like maps or diagrams of something much larger. The revelations are not random. They feel structured, as if Leonardo anticipated future viewers with sharper tools and a willingness to search. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the roadmap left behind by these discoveries is staggering. Symbols hidden in the pupils of the Mona Lisa, the possibility of a musical code woven into the Last Supper, the precise use of sacred geometry that links faces to cosmic patterns, and the intertwining of anatomy with celestial diagrams suggest one unified vision. It's not just art, not just science, but a grand design in which each canvas becomes a doorway into knowledge, transformation, and the endless journey of discovery. And since interpretation itself is part of this journey, I'd love to hear your instinct. Write in the comments the word decode if you believe art still carries mysteries waiting for us to uncover, because your perspective adds another layer to this conversation, one Leonardo himself might have hoped for. Approaching Leonardo's work requires a certain mindset, one that blends skepticism with openness, because the line between fact and speculation is as delicate as the sfumato he mastered. Official narratives, guarded by museums and institutions, often emphasize the genius of his brushwork, while carefully avoiding claims of coded messages. Yet alongside this perspective, live alternative readings, those who search for the hidden truth in geometry, in the positioning of hands, or in the faint outlines beneath layers of paint. The balance lies in critical curiosity, neither blind acceptance nor outright dismissal, but a willingness to explore the possibility that what looks like coincidence may instead be intention. It's in this space, where imagination meets evidence, that the journey becomes truly impactful. The paintings that take center stage in this exploration form a constellation of sorts. The Mona Lisa with her enigmatic gaze, the Last Supper with its dramatic tension, the Virgin of the Rocks with its shadowed cavern, St. John the Baptist pointing mysteriously upward, and the Adoration of the Magi, dense with figures and hidden gestures. Each one stands as a chapter in a larger story, interlinked by themes of duality, transformation, and coded symbolism. Leonardo never repeated himself, yet across these canvases there are echoes, gestures mirrored, landscapes aligned, expressions that blur boundaries between masculine and feminine. Behind the scenes of what looks like simple variation lies the impression of a deliberate design, as though these works were fragments of a greater tapestry. The question then becomes, why have so many of these supposed clues remained invisible for centuries? The answer may lie not only in Leonardo's extraordinary control of technique, but in his understanding of time itself. He painted with patience, layering glazes so thin they could outlast generations, embedding microsymmetries that only emerge under magnification, creating subtle shadows that trick the eye into seeing one thing and then another. It's as if he anticipated the decisions of future viewers, crafting paintings that would not yield their secrets at once, but only when the right tools, the right questions, and the right moment in history aligned. That mindset reflects not just artistic mastery, but a philosophy of revelation, knowledge that unfolds gradually, inviting discovery rather than demanding belief. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you accept that Leonardo may have designed his works as layered puzzles, every detail starts to feel alive with intention. The tilt of a head, the fall of light across a hand, the placement of a mountain in the distance, each can be read as part of a system, a network of clues left deliberately incomplete, so that centuries later, we would still be drawn into the search. And that search is more than art history. It is a journey into the human drive to decode meaning, to question appearances, and to confront the possibility that some truths are meant to remain just out of reach, forever pulling us closer. If you've ever stood before a painting and felt it was looking back at you, leave a comment with the word gaze. It's a simple word, but it captures the mysterious dialogue between viewer and canvas, and it would be fascinating to know how many of us have shared that experience. When you look closely into the Mona Lisa's eyes, there's an uncanny sense that she is not only returning your gaze but also offering something more, something hidden in plain sight. Leonardo once said the eyes are windows to the soul, and in this case, they feel like carefully guarded doorways to another layer of meaning. Under magnification, researchers claimed to see faint inscriptions, nearly imperceptible to the naked eye, etched into the dark pigment of her pupils. In the right eye, the letters L and V, Leonardo's own initials, appear as if sealed inside, a signature too discreet for vanity, but just bold enough to suggest deliberate design. And in the left, strange markings emerge, perhaps a C, maybe an E, and the numbers 7 and 2. To some, these are nothing more than illusions of paint and age, the mind searching for patterns. But when it comes to Leonardo, coincidence rarely feels sufficient. The interpretation of 72 has fueled debates that stretch far beyond traditional art history. In Kabbalistic mysticism, the 72 names of God represent divine power and hidden truth, a connection Leonardo could have encountered in Renaissance circles where esoteric knowledge was exchanged as quietly as forbidden texts. Others see it as geometry. 72 degrees, the sacred angle of the pentagon, tied to the golden ratio he obsessively studied. There are even those who believe it could point to scripture, like Psalm 72, which speaks of kingship and justice, themes that resonate with the regal aura of the sitter herself. Each possibility opens a different path, a different journey of interpretation, leaving us to wonder whether the number is not a code to solve, but a key designed to multiply meaning. Leonardo thrived on this ambiguity. His genius was not only in discovery, but in restraint, in his decision to embed layers that could survive through time and transform depending on who was looking and what knowledge they brought with them. These tiny symbols, real or imagined, act like seeds of curiosity, ensuring that the painting never becomes static, never reduced to a single narrative. Instead, it adapts, evolving with every generation that dares to look deeper. It's almost as if he anticipated the impact of future viewers, leaving behind visual riddles that would remain dormant until the right eyes, the right tools, and the right mindset converged centuries later. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because beyond the numbers and letters, the very structure of her eyes may contain microsymbols, shapes, and overlays that align with patterns of divine proportion, whispering that geometry itself might be the true language behind her gaze. And if that's the case, then the Mona Lisa isn't only looking at us, she may be pointing us toward a hidden system of order, waiting quietly within her enigmatic stare. If the idea of finding meaning in the smallest of details fascinates you, write the word detail in the comments. It will be interesting to see how many of us believe that sometimes the greatest revelations are hidden in the tiniest places. When researchers began to overlay spirals, crosses, and tiny star-like shapes across the geometry of the Mona Lisa's face, something extraordinary seemed to emerge. Her eyes, rather than simply being features of portraiture, start to look like coordinates, points on a hidden grid, where divine proportion rules over every curve and angle. It's as if Leonardo used the golden ratio not only to construct harmony, but to conceal a cipher, a mathematical language designed to transcend time. What appears subtle to us now could have been a deliberate act of encoding, a way of embedding meaning that only those with the patience and vision to look beyond the surface might recognize. This behind-the-scenes precision transforms a smile, a gaze, even the line of a cheek, into more than art. They become part of a structured message. Leonardo's love for mirrored logic adds another layer to this puzzle. His notebooks filled with mirror writing weren't just eccentric habits. They reveal a mindset that valued reflection as a key to unlocking knowledge. Imagine, then, the possibility that the Mona Lisa's eyes, when seen in reflection, might reveal patterns otherwise invisible, almost like a puzzle that only completes itself when viewed from a doubled perspective. This was a man who staged illusions, created theatrical machinery, and engineered moving scenes for court banquets, why wouldn't he apply the same ingenuity to his canvases? The hidden truth may not be in what we see directly, but in how perception itself is manipulated, urging us to question whether what meets the eye is ever the whole story. And here lies the psychological genius of his work. Humans are naturally drawn to the eyes. They command our focus. They anchor our interpretation of emotion. They influence our decisions about trust and intent. Leonardo knew this instinct intimately, and he turned it into a tool of revelation. By planting subtle anomalies where our gaze lingers most, he ensured we would not only notice them, but feel compelled to return again and again, as if something important were hiding just beyond reach. It's a subtle manipulation of mindset. He doesn't hand us answers. He stirs curiosity, and that curiosity becomes the engine of discovery. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you understand how eyes serve as both a focal point and a distraction, you start to see how the rest of the painting becomes a stage for illusion. The background, the smile, the shadows, all of them may be working together to redirect perception, guiding us along a journey Leonardo designed centuries ago, one that still has the power to unsettle and inspire. If you've ever had the experience of looking into someone's eyes and feeling there was a hidden story behind them, leave a comment with the word depth. It will be fascinating to see how many of us have sensed that same layered mystery, both in art and in life. The Mona Lisa effect is one of those phenomena that seems almost supernatural until you realize it is the result of deliberate artistic engineering. Leonardo's sfumato softened edges so carefully that her gaze appears to follow you no matter where you stand, creating the uncanny impression that the painting itself is alive. This subtle illusion transforms the act of viewing into a two-way encounter. You are not only analyzing the painting, but being analyzed by it. The impact of this sensation goes beyond technique. It alters your mindset, placing you inside a silent dialogue where you begin to wonder whether the painting is protecting its hidden truth or quietly inviting you to uncover it. In mystical traditions across cultures, the eye has always been more than an organ of sight. It represents perception, awareness, spiritual awakening. The eye of Horus in Egypt, the all-seeing eye in Western symbolism, the third eye in Eastern philosophy, all of them embody the idea of vision beyond the physical. Leonardo was immersed in a Renaissance climate that blended science with esoteric knowledge, and his circles included thinkers willing to push against the boundaries of accepted belief. For him, painting an eye that follows, one that feels infused with intention, could be a way of aligning with that symbolic tradition. It suggests that the Mona Lisa is not simply a portrait, but a mirror of ancient archetypes, layered with meaning that transcends her enigmatic beauty. And then there is her smile, the element that has captured more speculation than any other. At first glance, it seems fleeting, delicate, even ghost-like, appearing and disappearing depending on where your attention rests. But what if this smile is more than an illusion of optics? What if it is the central keystone in a larger system, the place where geometry, philosophy, and symbolism converge? The smile sits on the golden arc of her face, balanced within the Fibonacci spiral that governs her proportions. It becomes less of a personal expression and more of a symbol, an intentional cipher that binds the entire composition together. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you begin to see her smile as the master key, every other feature rearranges itself around that idea. The eyes, the landscape, even the way her hands rest on one another, start to feel like components of a grand design, a hidden map waiting to be read. If you believe that a smile can carry layers of meaning far beyond emotion, write the word key in the comments. It will be fascinating to see how many of us agree that sometimes the smallest gestures can unlock the greatest revelations. The genius of Leonardo's design is that her smile is not constant. It shifts with you, fading when you look directly at her lips and blooming again when your gaze drifts elsewhere. Modern neuroscience explains this through low spatial frequency gradients, subtle tonal transitions that the eye catches more in peripheral vision than in focused attention. But behind the science lies Leonardo's deliberate choice, a decision to build an expression that exists in two states at once, It is both present and absent, joy and restraint, serenity and enigma. This engineered duality forces the viewer into an active role, transforming the painting into an experiment in perception. You don't just observe the Mona Lisa, you participate in the illusion, and that participation ensures the mystery lives on. And the more you look, the more you realize her face resists easy categorization. Some scholars have argued that it is neither wholly feminine nor wholly masculine, but a careful fusion of both, an androgyny that speaks of balance rather than identity. In Hermetic philosophy, this union of opposites is a symbol of transformation, the alchemical rebus, representing harmony between dual forces. Leonardo, fascinated by the interplay of nature's polarities, could have embedded this fusion not as a whim, but as a philosophical statement. Perfection lies not in separation, but in unity. The sitter becomes more than a person. She becomes an idea, an emblem of integration, whispering a hidden truth about the nature of completeness. Beneath the visible layers, however, things become even stranger. Advanced scans have revealed faint anatomical shapes in the underpainting, some resembling the contours of a skull. For some, this suggests an intentional memento mori, a reminder of mortality hidden beneath beauty. For others, it reflects Leonardo's obsession with anatomy, embedding echoes of his dissections within the portrait itself. When combined with the golden proportions structuring her features, these underforms suggest that the Mona Lisa is simultaneously a study of life, death, and cosmic order. A smile positioned on a golden arc, eyes aligned with spirals of proportion, and beneath it all the faint reminder of the skull, mortality balanced with geometry, metaphysics woven into pigment. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you view her not just as a sitter, but as a layered cipher of anatomy, geometry, and philosophy, the portrait begins to feel less like an image of a woman and more like a manifesto of Leonardo's worldview. It becomes a map where every curve and shadow points to revelations about existence itself, as if beauty were only the surface of a much larger code. If you've ever felt that beauty often hides complexity beneath its surface, leave a comment with the word layers. It will be fascinating to see how many recognize that what seems simple at first glance often carries the deepest meanings. The more closely you study the Mona Lisa, the clearer it becomes that her smile is far more than a fleeting expression. Spirals unfurl from the corners of her mouth, golden ratios trace invisible arcs across her features, and symmetries lock together with such precision that her smile becomes the keystone holding the entire composition in balance. It is not simply beauty painted onto canvas, but mathematics disguised as emotion. Leonardo's mastery of proportion transforms the act of smiling into a cipher, a place where geometry and philosophy intersect. When you realize this, the painting stops being a portrait of a woman and begins to feel like a coded system, an instruction to search for harmony hidden beneath appearances. This sense of structure doesn't stop at one painting. Researchers who have experimented with overlays found that when the Mona Lisa is aligned with works like The Last Supper or St. John the Baptist, patterns repeat with uncanny precision. Gestures align, gazes cross at proportional points, and even backgrounds fall into symmetrical relationships. Was this an accident born from habit, or evidence of a larger intentional grid guiding Leonardo's art? If it was deliberate, it suggests that each painting is a fragment of a greater whole, like chapters of a code spread across his studio. Behind the scenes, his decisions in composition may not have been individual choices, but steps in constructing a unified vision of reality expressed through multiple canvases. And then there is the background, often dismissed as mere decoration. Look carefully and you notice something unsettling. The elevations on each side don't match. One half seems lower, winding with gentle valleys, while the other rises abruptly into cliffs and bridges. This dissonance fuels the idea that the background is not landscape but map, stitched together from memories of real places, or perhaps designed as an allegory of transformation. Some scholars connect it to sites Leonardo visited, while others see it as symbolic terrain, one side representing the known world of order and safety, the other leading into the unknown, the realm of revelation and hidden truth. It is almost as if the sitter sits not only between two halves of a painting, but between two worlds, one grounded in reality, and one opening toward mystery. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you treat the background as more than scenery, the entire portrait shifts. The rivers, paths, and mountains begin to feel like coordinates of a journey, a cartography of the soul, where every curve invites interpretation. The Mona Lisa doesn't just look back at us. She places us at a crossroads, silently asking which path we choose to follow. If you've ever felt that a place in nature seemed to speak to you like a symbol, leave a comment with the word map. It will be fascinating to see how many of us believe that landscapes, just like faces, can hold messages waiting to be uncovered. Some scholars have argued that the landscape behind the Mona Lisa is not imagined at all, but a carefully constructed reflection of places Leonardo knew intimately. Digital overlays suggest the winding river may echo the Trebbia, and the arched structure resembles the Ponte del Diavolo near Bobbio in northern Italy. If this is true, then the painting carries not just allegory but memory, embedding fragments of geography into its backdrop. It becomes a hybrid of lived experience and symbolic construction, a space where the real and the mythical merge. By choosing familiar terrain, Leonardo may have anchored his hidden truth in places only he could fully recognize, creating a silent link between his journey through the world and the journey he painted into his art. The pathways, bridges, and distant peaks only add to this impression. They read, like steps on a pilgrimage, each element positioned as a waypoint in an initiatory journey. You move from the earthly, paths that touch the sitter's presence, to bridges that cross thresholds, to mountains that rise toward the unknown. It's not difficult to imagine this as an alchemical map, guiding the viewer from matter toward spirit, from confusion toward revelation. The sitter's calm expression seems to affirm this transformation, as though she is both guardian and guide. The impact of this design lies not only in its beauty, but in the mindset it creates. You begin to see the painting less as a static image and more as a passage, a threshold inviting you forward. And then, there is the horizon itself. The rivers curl into spirals that echo the Fibonacci sequence, while the peaks align in ways that some believe mirror constellations like Orion. This is where Leonardo's fascination with proportion, astronomy, and geometry converge. The landscape ceases to be mere scenery. It becomes a cosmic diagram, blending earth and sky in the principle of as above, so below. In this reading, the Mona Lisa is not simply a portrait at all, but a convergence point, a space where geography, mythology, and cosmology overlap to create a map of existence itself. What begins as a backdrop reveals itself as the key to understanding how Leonardo saw the unity of all things. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because if the horizon is truly a mirror of both Earth and cosmos, then the painting may be inviting us to see ourselves not just as viewers of art, but as participants in a universal pattern. That is where the journey hidden in the background begins to transform into something larger than a portrait. It becomes a reflection of our place in the order of things. If you've ever stood beneath a night sky and felt that the stars above were somehow connected to the ground beneath your feet, write the word cosmos in the comments. It will be fascinating to see how many of us share that same intuition of unity between the world we walk and the heavens we watch. When you begin comparing the Mona Lisa's landscape with other works by Leonardo, a curious pattern emerges. The same cliffs, the same bridges, the same winding arcs of rivers reappear in places like the Virgin of the Rocks, the Baptism of Christ, and even the Annunciation. At first, it might seem like a painter repeating motifs he favored, but when you trace the alignments, the echoes feel too deliberate to dismiss. These recurring shapes act almost like glyphs, anchor points that connect one canvas to another, as though each painting were a page in a much larger codebook. The repetition becomes a signature, not of identity, but of intention, suggesting that Leonardo wasn't painting isolated works at all, but fragments of a continuous vision. The possibility of hidden systems doesn't stop with images. In 2007, Giovanni Maria Palla proposed that the Last Supper itself might contain a musical composition. He mapped the placement of hands and loaves along the table onto a 5-line staff, and when read from right to left, consistent with Leonardo's mirrored habits, the arrangement formed a solemn 40-second hymn. Whether or not this was Leonardo's intention, the very plausibility of such a discovery says much about how he thought. For him, art was never limited to one sense. A painting could also be music, a composition of ratios and rhythms, disguised as gesture and form. This blending of sight and sound reflects a mindset deeply rooted in Renaissance thought, where knowledge wasn't divided into separate fields, but seen as threads of one fabric. Geometry, optics, and music all shared the same foundation in harmonic ratios. Vision and sound were different expressions of the same mathematics, and Leonardo was obsessed with finding the hidden truth that linked them. Behind the scenes of his brushwork lies a conviction that the universe is structured by proportion, and that by decoding it, through lines, through notes, through spirals, we glimpse the order beneath appearances. The impact of this perspective is transformative. Once you see art and science as parts of one language, you begin to realize that nothing Leonardo created was accidental. Each decision was part of a journey toward revealing unity in diversity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because if a painting can also be read as music, then perhaps every detail, gesture, shadow, proportion, becomes a note in a larger score. A symphony Leonardo wrote not for the ears or eyes alone, but for the mind willing to perceive harmony in all things. If you believe that music and images can sometimes express the same emotion in different ways, write the word harmony in the comments. It will be fascinating to see how many of us feel that connection between sound and vision as two doors leading to the same revelation. When you turn from the Mona Lisa to St. John the Baptist, it feels less like moving to a different painting and more like encountering a twin veiled in sacred symbolism. The softness of his features, the enigmatic smile, even the subtle androgyny that unsettles traditional expectations, all mirror the same ambiguity that defines Lisa's face. His raised finger, pointing upward, complicates everything further. In standard iconography, it signals divinity, yet in Leonardo's hands it also feels like a coded gesture, as though he is directing us beyond the frame toward a truth hidden above or behind the surface. This kinship between works suggests that Leonardo wasn't painting individuals so much as archetypes, faces meant to hold duality, to embody the meeting of opposites, and to remind us that revelation often hides inside paradox. The mystery deepens when technology peers beneath the paint. Enhanced scans of St. John the Baptist reveal shadows that don't belong, the ghost of what could be an extra hand, and even faint outlines suggesting a second, obscured figure. Whether these are underdrawings from earlier versions or deliberate layers meant to remain half-seen, their presence reinforces Leonardo's tendency to hide truths in plain sight. It is as though he wanted the viewer to sense something more than the obvious, to feel that behind every gesture lies another gesture, behind every presence, another presence. The hidden truth here is less about what the painting shows, and more about what it withholds, training us to recognize that knowledge itself is layered, elusive, always inviting us to question. This approach connects seamlessly with his most iconic diagram, the Vitruvian Man. In its perfect proportions, the human body is inscribed within circle and square, symbols of cosmos and earth, heaven and matter. This wasn't just a drawing of anatomy, it was a philosophy, a meta-template Leonardo could overlay on any creation. When applied to his paintings, it reveals patterns that tie together faces, gestures, and landscapes. The figure of man becomes not only a measure of beauty, but the very blueprint of harmony, a bridge between the tangible and the infinite. The impact is profound. Art becomes more than representation. It becomes a map of existence itself, structured on the unity of form and proportion. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you see how the Vitruvian system weaves itself through canvas after canvas, you begin to realize that Leonardo may have been crafting not isolated masterpieces but chapters of a single universal manuscript written in geometry, shadow, and flesh. If you've ever felt that a simple drawing or symbol carried more power than words could express, leave a comment with the word blueprint. It will be fascinating to see how many of us sense that some images are not just pictures, but maps to understanding. In Leonardo's final years, his notebooks filled with visions of storms and floods, drawings of deluge and destruction, where spirals of water swallowed cities and torrents twisted into endless vortices. At first glance, they might seem like records of nightmares, but when you study them carefully, the precision is astonishing. Every swirl of water is plotted with mathematical care, every current rendered with the eye of an engineer. It is chaos drawn with intention, despair expressed through geometry. Leonardo wasn't simply sketching catastrophe, he was capturing the hidden truth that even destruction follows laws, that collapse and transformation are not opposites but part of the same journey. In those drawings, nature's violence becomes a kind of coded message. Disorder is never without structure, and endings always conceal beginnings. This same philosophy seeps into his painting technique. Sfumato, that smoke-like blending he perfected, is more than a stylistic choice. It works like a soft encryption, concealing details beneath layers that only reveal themselves under the right conditions. Modern scans expose sub-images, geometric alignments, and subtle paths invisible to the naked eye, as though the canvas itself were a form of steganography. What looks like atmosphere becomes language. What feels like softness becomes a veil. The impact of this realization is profound. You are no longer simply looking at art. You are decoding a system where shadow and light are carriers of information. It's art as encryption, beauty as a cipher. And then, when you lift your gaze to the celestial, the same patterns echo in the stars. Scholars have read the apostles in the Last Supper as zodiacal figures, each aligned with astrological archetypes. The Mona Lisa's horizon, too, has been linked to constellations, with peaks and rivers matching the geometry of Orion. Even the Vitruvian Man, that human figure inscribed in circle and square, can be seen as a sky mirror, an earthly body reflecting cosmic order. This blending of anatomy and astronomy suggests that Leonardo saw no division between earth and heaven, body and cosmos. He was painting not just people or landscapes, but correspondences, reminders that everything is connected, above and below, inside and out. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you begin to trace these alignments, the paintings stop being mere works of art and start to resemble instruments of orientation, compasses pointing not only to sacred geometry, but to our own place within the universe. If you've ever felt that looking at the stars gave you the sense of being both small and infinite at the same time, leave a comment with the word orbit. It will be fascinating to see how many of us share that same feeling of belonging to a larger design. Leonardo's dissections were never just clinical exercises. They were acts of revelation. By opening the human body, he wasn't only mapping muscles and veins but searching for correspondences, patterns that could link flesh to river, bone to mountain, heart to the sun itself. Through the golden ratio and the phi spiral, he found echoes of the cosmos within the microcosm of anatomy. A vein's branching mirrored the way a delta splits into streams, the chambers of the heart pulsed with the rhythm of celestial cycles, and the proportions of the skeleton aligned with the same geometry that traced the heavens. To Leonardo, the body was not an isolated vessel but a fragment of the universe, carrying within it the same rules that governed stars, tides, and galaxies. This hidden truth transformed medicine into philosophy, anatomy into metaphysics, and art into a universal language. This vision has carried forward for centuries, shaping not only the history of art, but also the way we interpret knowledge itself. The so-called Da Vinci Code is less about one secret to be unlocked, and more about an endless invitation to look again, to question deeper, to recognize that behind the scenes of every canvas lies a mindset that refuses separation between science and wonder. Secret. Societies claimed him as an initiate of mysteries. Novelists and filmmakers cast him as the keeper of esoteric truths. And now even artificial intelligence scans his works in search of patterns he may or may not have hidden. Yet the real impact of Leonardo's legacy is not whether one specific cipher exists, but that his art teaches us to expect hidden layers, to cultivate curiosity, and to treat every decision, our own as much as his, as part of a larger design. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because if Leonardo's code is not a single answer but a way of seeing, then perhaps the real inheritance he left us is the ability to merge analysis with wonder, to live at the intersection of precision and imagination. In that sense, his paintings are less about solving riddles and more about transforming the viewer, pulling us into a journey where every shadow, every ratio, every subtle smile becomes a reminder that the world itself is written in signs. If you've ever felt that a mystery was valuable not because of the solution, but because of how it changed the way you looked at life, leave a comment with the word wonder. It will be fascinating to see how many of us agree that sometimes the unanswered questions are the ones with the greatest power. If you made it all the way here, I think it's safe to say you and I share the same fascination for mysteries that stretch far beyond the surface. That's exactly why it makes sense for you to subscribe. So every time we dive into another hidden layer of history, art, or philosophy, you'll already be part of the journey. And since we've come this far together, let's make it a little more special. Leave a comment with the phrase, "I'm with you until the end," so I know you're one of the ones who stayed and explored every detail with me. If this exploration stirred your curiosity, tap the like button. It's a simple way of showing that this kind of content resonates with you, and it helps me keep bringing more discoveries your way. And before you go, there's a video right here that beautifully complements everything we've uncovered today. Click and continue with me over there. The journey is only just beginning.